mean, again, growth, and change it can sometimes be uncomfortable,
Yes.
but it's better than the alternative because there is no pause button.
Welcome to Prime Lunchtime with Brian Johnson, a monthly podcast featuring the city manager and your host, Rico Figliolini. Taking the conversation beyond just talk, it's about getting the facts, discussing the issues, and asking honest questions of our city.
Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Prime Lunchtime with city manager Brian Johnson. Let's bring Brian on with me. And hey, Brian, how are you?
Rico, good. Nice to be here.
Great. Always good to have you on. So this segment, we're going to be discussing a bit about a bond resolution that was discussed and I believe passed. That's the Public Facilities Authority. We're going to be discussing the Governor's Lake Master Plan, Medlock Bridge, the rezoning that's going on there, along with Curiosity Lab celebrates its first anniversary. It's hard to believe it's been a year. So we're going to be talking about all that. But before we get into that, I just want to thank our lead sponsor and a great sponsor. They are Hargray Fiber. They're a local Southeast company that provides internet service and solutions for companies, small and large enterprise companies as well out there that are looking to create a place for their employees to be able to continue to work off-site as well as to be able to now come back to work possibly in some places. So they're not the cable guy. They're a company that really is involved in the local community, and we actually will have an article about them in the next issue, and you can see what they're doing here in Peachtree Corners. So check them out at hargrayfiber.com or hargray.com/business. I believe they have a promotion going on, a $1,000 Visa gift card you can have if you meet certain criteria and become a client of theirs. So thank you, Hargray Fiber. Appreciate you being our lead sponsor to these podcasts. So let's continue on with City Manager Brian Johnson. So we could probably keep talking about all sorts of issues, but the hot and moving thing right now we're going to get onto is what I've seen comments on the Nextdoor app. Of course, we've cleared up some of the facts and some of the things going on in the last podcast, but let's get back to it again for a little bit. At the East Jones Bridge project, which is also known as the property is also known as the old 5-serve property, 55 and older, 55 plus senior community center that's been adjusted. I don't know if we need to go through all those details, but we certainly want to talk a bit about what's going on with the clearing that's going on right now and stuff. So can you give us a little bit more, Brian, about progress over the last few weeks on that piece?
So, since we last talked, council did have a change of conditions request by the developers to allow for the institutional use, the memory care and assisted living to allow the developers to build it as at the end of the project instead of at the middle, and also to allow for the age restriction of 55 and older to be removed from some of the product types. So at the end of the day, what you've got is you have, I think it's probably fair to say, an age-targeted community. It is still has to be targeted to an active adult. It still has to have the institutional use. It still has a bunch of restrictions against, constructing things that would be considered family-friendly, young family-friendly, that is. Right. But about a third of the units could be inhabited by somebody who is not 55 or older, but 2/3 of the units will ultimately still have that. But that request was approved, and so the developer was able to maintain their financing, so they started on that project. And of course, as is the case with any project that is both as large as this one is on a piece of property that has been vacant for as long as this has been, and is, of course, developing in a more dense way, at least from a, at-grade perspective, meaning how many square feet within the parcel is going to have an improvement. When you factor all those things in there, there's been some, significant change to the property, in that, there has been a lot of the initial tree removal necessary to construct, new buildings. And it's been eye-catching because we're all used to looking in there and seeing just no activity and all these trees, and that's it. But yes, so that has been significant. There's more, construction traffic there. Of course, part of the construction traffic, actually, as it stands right now, is also due to Gwinnett County Department of Water Resources. They are doing a large sewer main upgrade project, and they are upgrading the sewer line from essentially the Forum headed west through Amberfield subdivision and a number of the other subdivisions, and basically crossing underneath East Jones Bridge right there at where the old Fiserv property entrance is. Mm-hmm. And then they're running it down to the transfer station they have, which is basically at the back of Simpsonwood, where Simpsonwood, meets the Chattahoochee. But anyway, so there's a big utility project there also. But there's a bunch of construction activity there. And, again, optically, it's a big change.
Yeah. Well, it's the same change, though, that would have happened regardless of the change of removing the 55 on those properties. It would have been because it's the same amount of units. Nothing's changed with that. Even the site plan hasn't changed, correct? It's the same site plan setup.
That is a great point, Rico. This exact activity you would have seen regardless of the change of conditions. Now, some people were not aware that this project had even been approved 2.5 years ago. So to some people, they weren't even aware a project was coming. So I get that. And again, even from somebody who, sees it every day, when your eye is used to seeing, this large area where there's a bunch of trees and no activity, it's eye-catching. Yeah. But it is important to note, though, that, the entire property is within the river corridor. So all of the tree removal is in keeping with the Metropolitan River Protection Act. The tree removal and, replanting plan for the development was approved by ARC and as a part of the project. And so as with all projects like this, you often see a period of time where the trees have been removed, but the replanted trees haven't been replanted yet and the buildings haven't been there. So, we are in that period where there's the least amount of vegetation on the parcel, but it'll get better.
They're going to replant. Granted, they're not going to replant 50-year-old trees or
it's different.
40-foot trees. They're going to be like 10, 12-foot trees maybe. It's going to take some time for them to grow in. But, no different than, quite frankly, when I moved here in 95, no different than the Forum being built than the town center, years later, or even the people that lived here before Amberfield was actually built. And all that had to be removed. The fact that the city bought Simpsonwood, and actually Gwinnett County, but the city helped with $1 million in there to be able to save that almost 300 acres of land and keep it forested smack in the middle of Peachtree Corners. Could we have bought the Fiserv property? Would the citizens have had enough courage or belly to be able to take that and invest whatever that would have taken, millions of dollars to buy that and preserve it? Doubtful. People have been complaining about that also. And like you said, that was forested, typical of high technology companies. Siemens was there. You have a beautiful campus. You have a great place for your employees to work. Now it's shifted from that to residential. You're going to have clear cutting to a degree. And obviously, there's a lot of land that's back there that's not going to be clear cut.
And that's another good point, too, is when you see from East Jones Bridge is this alley, this narrow corridor.
Right.
And you can kind of see around the corner, but what you can't really see unless you got on the property is there are a number of tree save areas that are still in there. Yep. There are some specimen trees that were, saved. And so it wasn't completely clear cut, but optically, it kind of looks that way just because you were used to just seeing it. But so anyway, but that's proceeding. I guess the good news here is we are getting that phase one. They are moving forward as fast as they can. Mm-hmm. And it's always good to see that, the financing was in place for them to get this going. And so it's not going to lie vacant. for a long period of time, or again, for it to revert back to use by right stuff that we don't like. So,
well, and the fact that they clear cut it, you hope that the development will move fast. I mean, the worst thing to have is clear cut land that just sits there.
No, they are wanting to. They're wanting to get as much of the site work as they can before the weather turns against us, and it either gets rainy or cold or both. So they're blowing and going, and again, when that happens fast, it's oftentimes like, oh, that's a change. But
so let's move along a little bit. Also, the town center; those townhouses are coming up. I've been noticing that. I don't know if half of them are up now, but quite a few of them are up. Is that going well? Do you know anything about that development at this point?
I mean, much like townhomes go, especially at that price point, they typically go in phases, meaning they will do a percentage of them and then sell them, and the proceeds of the sale of that phase then are used to go into the next one. They are proceeding. I mean, they have not hit any kind of a wall where they're saying, "Oh, we're not able to fill units." Mm-hmm. So we have every indication that it is proceeding exactly how Lennar had planned it to proceed. Oh. So yes, that's good. Rooftops at Town Center / Forum, rooftops at what has become our downtown are important because those are walk-up customers to the businesses that are there that help keep these businesses in business.
Are you hearing anything more about, I know I asked about this a month ago, but, things change, about the apartments project / Indigo at Town Center, anything more about that?
No, I mean, again, other than having been notified that, hotel construction is probably not in the cards for that site within the time period we gave the owner of the site to construct it, because he was given, I believe it was 4 years, and to start construction, to actually, have an approved site plan and move forward with it. And he's now within 2 years left. And so, yes, there will not be, not because our site is not, but there is nobody building new hotels right now.
Is Hilton Hotel closed? That's what I heard. The Hilton is closed, and the Marriott Hotel might only be about a 20% occupancy rate. I could be off, but I understand the Hilton Hotel is actually closed at this point.
I don't know the answer to that. I have not heard that. I do know that as Hiltons go in Metro Atlanta, that is one of the better performing ones. Right. According to, Gwinnett County and the tourism, who has a real good, but, there are transitions. I also do know that that property had some upgrades that had been kind of in the on-deck circle for them. They may have taken this as an opportunity to do those while the occupancy is down. Yeah. And, and I know that the Marriott, all hotels' occupancy is way down. I don't know what percentage, but we do. I see Marriott's parking lot because I drive past it more than the Hilton, and there are, a significant enough cars in the parking lot for me to know that it's not just staff. So
I'm sure. And the Hilton, I'm thinking, is temporarily closed. What I understand from a couple of restaurateurs that I've spoken to. Other developments going on. The Governor's Lake across the Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, depending on where you come from. 75 acres. They're looking to rezone that to MultiUse Development. How's that going? I understand there's a first read that happened this past Tuesday. How does that look to you?
Well, so to go back about 3 to 4 months, those who, are involved in the city may remember there was an application, a rezoning application by the owner of the undeveloped property in this area to rezone a portion of the property he owns. He owns about 87 total acres over there, and he was wanting to have about a third of it rezoned for townhomes. And they were basically on both sides of Jones Mill Road in that area. Okay. And his application was significant to the city because to rezone it in the direction he wanted away from industrial and towards residential or mixed use was significant because he was asking the city to change our future land use map and our comp plan because, the rezoning would have been contrary to how the future land use map looks for that area. Mm. And so it's kind of a significant move. In the city's 8.5 years, we have never had a rezoning that required us to change our future land use map. And as you know, as a former planning commissioner, you know that map is it's kind of sacrosanct because that's kind of the guide you use if people want to rezone and you are like, okay, they want to rezone. Well, what does our future land use map hold for that property to ultimately become in our mind? And if it's not headed that direction, it causes you to pause.
Well, also you're planning things out, the county and the state, they're planning roads, water, traffic. Right. I mean, it's not just we rezone it, it's because there's plans being developed because of that plan.
Right, and so it's kind of a big step. And so there was some concern by council expressed to the applicant that, hey, all right, this is a big step. Well, what about the other 2/3 of the property that you own that's undeveloped? Because when you consider the whole thing, it's basically the last large remaining undeveloped tract we have in the city. And so there was some discussion about what that would be. And so then the applicant or the owner withdrew the application and has gone back and has had some discussions and done some things, planning wise, and has resubmitted a rezoning application that includes the entire remaining undeveloped acreage. So that's the application that's going back through council. Instead of just wanting to rezone a portion, it's to rezone the whole thing. And so that discussion, which will, when it ensues, will be about all of it.
Does it pretty much include the townhouses where he had spec'd them out, I guess? He must have submitted a site plan, I guess.
So originally there was really two separate rezonings for each side of Jones Mill Road.
Okay.
There's it's about 12 acres on what would be, I guess, the south side of Jones Mill Road, the farther away from the Governor's Lake property that had already been approved by council. That company building those homes, McKinley Homes, had been interested in taking and doing their product on the other side of the road. That had been part of the application. When the owner withdrew the application, he did decide, and McKinley Homes is still moving forward with the original 12-ish acres townhomes. That development is still happening. But the part that was in the 80 acres has been withdrawn, and now it's just waiting on the entire rezoning to work its way through the system. So,
see, my fear would be that he just came back 3 months later, decided let's do this, and then still build what he wants, and then still maybe not do the rest of it. So, a multi-use development means means different things to different people, right? Could be mid-rise. I mean, that area is perfect for mid-rise, let's say, with office, retail, and creating a really nice look to it. Or it could be someone that says, well, we're going to have townhouses in this portion, we're going to have offices here, and we're going to have retail separate. Hopefully there's, like you said, it's the last it's the last largest parcel. And where it's located could stand to have a better development and something forward-thinking versus the run-of-the-mill, same stuff that there always is. They break up the parcels, say, we're going to do residential here, we'll do some office here, we'll do some retail here, and it becomes a strip thing and stuff, versus something a little bit more thought out.
We agree. Remember, that was by design included in the area that the redevelopment authority will be looking at.
Right.
Council recognized the importance of it, which is why it kind of wanted to have a discussion about all of the parcels so that we make sure that it's done in a, kind of cohesive, well thought out manner. We definitely do not want to necessarily have it just cut up and have conventional use there. I think it's an opportunity.
Yes.
And so, what we're trying to do is we've kind of taken the property and helped the applicant, guide them a little bit and say, look, break the parcel up into kind of pods, or we call it a bubble plan, where you kind of break the large thing up into areas of the site that may be better served for certain types of uses. Like maybe closer to PIB might be a better place to have businesses that need high visibility. Maybe closer to some of the lakes back there might be a good place to have some, multifamily. Maybe there's some mix. So we're trying to, get the applicant to give the applicant flexibility, but ensure that the ingredients are there for the applicant to maybe come up with a product that we all are like, wow, that's really cool.
So there's a second read that's going to happen in October's City Council meeting.
November City Council meeting.
November. And then it's going to be voted on after.
Well, it'll be voted on at the same meeting.
At the same meeting. Okay. All right. So if anyone cares about that, and they should, that's the meeting to be at, right?
Yep.
Like you said, there weren't a lot of people maybe that remembered or were around 2.5 years ago about the East Jones Bridge project. That also went through public notice. That also went through public meetings. It was not a surprise to anyone. It was 900 plus acres. What was surprising to me back then was that no one that I knew really cared about the density there. They were all for it, regardless of 55 and older. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's still 900 units. But, everyone was, I didn't hear a peep. And there might have been some people, maybe, but obviously there wasn't enough. I don't remember city council, and I went to that city council meeting. So I can't help but tell people, if you are concerned about certain things, you really need to show up to these city council meetings, right? Even in COVID, you could do that safely there, I think. So there's that. One of the biggest things also that just happened in this last city council meeting is the Public Facilities Authority that was established, a refunding revenue bond that was voted on and approved to be put together. And so tell us about that. That's to pay back some of the purchase money, I think, for City Hall, we said, and for the Cheeley property that's next to the town center property that was purchased. So give us a thing.
So a number of years ago, we created the Public Facilities Authority. The purpose at the time was for the city to have a mechanism to enter into long-term leases. And the reason we were doing it is because we had just entered the final year of the lease at the original building that was City Hall in. Mm-hmm. And so when you enter the last year, you start to talk about, all right, what do we want to do? Do we want to stay here? Do we want to find another location? Do we want to lease? Do we want to buy? But the one thing this was shortly after I got to the city, the one thing that I knew would be a constraint would be if the city itself was entering into a lease. Cities cannot enter into long-term leases because councils cannot commit future councils of obligations. So the city can enter into a contract that has 5 one-year automatic renewals. Mm-hmm. But technically speaking, at the end of every year, the city has to have the ability to say, we're out, without any repercussion. So it's really 1-year leases. Right. But you can imagine that if the city is negotiating with the property owner for a lease, if I wanted to lease something from you and I said, I can only guarantee you 1 year at a time, even though I want to do it for 5 years, but each year I can just leave. You wouldn't give me the same terms with that much, flexibility on my part versus if I came to you and I said, yes, I'm prepared to execute a 5-year lease. And if I leave before the 5 years, you get to keep, down payment, or there could be other, penalties.
Sure.
So the Public Facilities Authority was created so that if the city was going to lease City Hall, the Public Facilities Authority could be the one who negotiates and enters into the lease because it can enter into long-term leases.
Right. And it can also do what they're doing now.
That's correct. So we didn't use it because, as most people know, we found a deal that we could buy a building, renovate it, lease the upstairs, and at the end of the day, after, what do we have, like 7 years left, we will own a 60,000 square foot building versus for only about $400 a month more than we were paying to lease 12,500 square feet.
Sure.
So really great deal. We bought the building. But recently, the city's finance director, as you know, and I have some good staff members, was kind of kicking over stones to see where maybe we can, look for savings and this and that, and did a little bit of consulting with some, consultants of ours, and realized that with the current economic conditions as they are, using the Public Facilities Authority, the city could take the two debt notes that we currently have, one on the City Hall building,
right,
and one on the property, the remaining undeveloped property out at the town center that's along, the town green there,
right,
and put them together and have the Public Facilities Authority do a flow to public bond and refinance it. And so we're going to use the Public Facilities Authority to combine those two notes and put it out on the municipal bond market. And the current terms, as we will get them, look like we will be saving about $1.2 million over the course of the note, or about a little over $100,000 a year for 10 years.
Wow. That is very smart. Who is your finance person?
Corey Sally is the name of our finance director. And so, yes, that is why I recruited him. And he has been my finance director in other municipalities.
Really?
And he has done it there too. And so, yes, that is why you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And I have done that in all of my department level positions that work directly for me. So it has been, that's just an example where we are in a position to save some money and do it without really doing anything other than using mechanisms that we have at our disposal and the current economic conditions and interest rates as they are. And so that's real savings that we can turn around and invest back in the community.
So that money that's being raised, is that raising just the amount? I think that was about $5.1 million or so. Is that just raising that, or is the bonds going to raise more money than what you're?
No. So the $1.2 million over the course of the 10 years is just in the savings that we'll realize yearly.
Right.
But we're not we're not amortizing it over any longer period of time. And it's just that the interest rates are better when we do it on the public, the municipal bond public market than the privately placed bonds that we did initially. And the PFA has some aspects to it that makes, bond investors, feel better. So when you just combine all those ingredients in the economic conditions, this is just savings realized by merely having the bond redone.
Sure. Okay. So it's the same money. It's just done in a different way.
The same money. That's exactly right.
All right. I want to also recognize the fact that the smart city, we've been involved in. I mean, you've been speaking at a lot of places that deal with smart city technology, a lot of conferences. There was a big smart city expo here in Atlanta a year ago. Curiosity Lab at Peachtree Corners celebrates its first anniversary this past week or so, a couple of weeks ago. So it's been a year of development work, a year of having companies come in, companies leaving. I think we had the Ollie at one point. It's not there now, but we have e-scooters. But there's certainly more companies like Bosch Technologies, I believe, is there. There's a bunch of companies coming in. So where are we with, Curiosity Lab as a magnet for bringing into a living lab different technologies? It's not just autonomous vehicles. People may just think it's that. But it's a lot more than that, right? It's everything that involves 5G technology, smart city, everything from lampposts to traffic to buildings even. I mean, we have ASHRAE building a building, renovating a whole building with new HVAC that's supposed to be smart technology and cutting edge, right? So tell us a little bit about what's going on now a year later with Curiosity Lab.
All right. So, as a reminder, when we decided to build a living lab, Curiosity Lab. The purpose then and it now is for economic development. And so this was our way of looking at economic development. And in addition to doing your conventional stuff, we thought we were in a unique position to leverage something that the city already is uniquely qualified to leverage, and that is take public infrastructure we own and make it available to private companies to use for the purposes of testing or demonstration. And by doing that, by offering something that private companies can't do on their own, we get activity. And that's where we benefit. And so, again, the thought here was if you were a company that wanted to come out and use Curiosity Lab just for one day, you wanted to come out here and run a vehicle up it, you wanted to put a device out there and track some things, whatever you did, but even just one day, generally speaking, you're going to still be hungry at lunch, and that means you're going to probably eat in our restaurants. That's activity. If you're here a couple of days because you got a team and you're going to test what, you're going to probably stay in our hotels. And there's the activity that you creating this magnet get. Now, we were, at the time that we did this, our wildest dreams were that we have what's called permanent economic development activity, is the recruitment of companies to do things in the city permanently that weren't doing there before that action. And we have had that happen even in the first year. Because of Curiosity Lab, we had 2 buildings that are on the track itself. One was the former Honeywell Aerospace building, and one was former Recall building that had been vacant for a number of years. In fact, in Honeywell building's case, longer than the city had been a city. And because of Curiosity Lab, 2 companies decided to relocate their global headquarters here. And the final reason that they chose this location over others that they were looking at was because of Curiosity Lab and the synergy they wanted to be a part of with the companies that were here doing testing. And these are companies that are not even direct users of the lab, but they wanted to be close to companies that were using it because they were like, we may end up having synergies together. I mean, you mentioned Bosch. We have Cisco that has become a partner. In addition, we got Georgia Power and T-Mobile, which used to be Sprint, right. And in Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State University. And these are companies that are doing real things out here, bringing people out here to test, to demonstrate, to collaborate. That wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for us. Mm-hmm. And these companies want to be here. And so within the first year, we've already filled over 100,000 square feet of vacant office building and had over 500 jobs move here that wouldn't have if it hadn't been Curiosity Lab. Yeah. And those are people who ultimately are going to want to live close to where they work. They're going to shop in our stores. They're going to eat in our restaurant permanently. They may be renting or buying houses here. And so that's real activity. And that's why we did this, and it is paying in spades. We're excited about the possibilities moving forward, but we just have activity that we would have never had if it hadn't been for COVID. I mean, the hotels that are especially the 4 that are on the track, mm-hmm. and even a couple that are just just a couple hundred yards off the track, were already showing increased numbers of people staying in the hotel that could say, yeah, we're here because of something at Curiosity Lab. Yeah. And so that's why we did it. That's why it has been working. That's why it continues to work. And, we're working hard to, continue those efforts. So when this COVID, fog is lifted, we'll hit the ground running again. Like you said, we're talking at a lot of conferences. Of course, it's, virtual conferences right now, but the word gets out and people are, lots of companies are here kicking the tires saying, hey, we want to do something. One interesting note is, so Curiosity Lab has a vehicle that is available to companies to put technology on to test, in the advanced vehicle arena. And with COVID, we've had to get creative in how we do things. We have an Israeli company that is in the LiDAR, arena. And they have a new LiDAR that they want to test on a vehicle for use in autonomous vehicles, later on. But because of COVID, they can't fly over here and do it. So what they're doing is they are shipping the technology, the components to the States. They're shipping it to an office they have in New York City. And then that individual is assembling it and then is shipping it from New York down here. And they are virtually going to talk us through some technicians we have on how to install it on the vehicle and start testing it.
Cool.
And to do so without actually having people having to fly,
Right.
given that they can't do it right now. So we're thinking outside the box, but those kind of things will help, again, get some people and some activity out here. So exciting stuff. But again, it's hard to gauge in some cases how much more activity has happened because of Curiosity Lab. But
Sure.
in year one, we at least have 2 buildings and 2 companies and over 500 jobs that we can put our finger on and say, thanks to Curiosity Lab, it happened.
For sure. And there are definitely other companies still coming to Peachtree Corners, like CarMax with their consumer, I think their call center. They've added, 300, 400, 500 jobs or something.
Yeah, CarMax's Experience Center has expanded beyond 500 jobs, even in the COVID environment, because we worked hard when they initially located here.
Mm-hmm.
It's about relationships. And if you work hard to develop, to cultivate a relationship, when the corporate office, it was time for them to look at the areas of the U.S. where there were already experience centers and they wanted to expand because they're doing well. They could have gone to any of them, but they decided to expand here because our economic development department and my individuals that are in that work really hard to cultivate those relationships, and they pay off.
Yeah. We were discussing before we started the podcast that the economy has really taken a hit, but that there may yet be several more businesses closing, restaurants and stuff like that, unfortunately, but that there's going to be such a celebration, I think, after hopefully within by maybe second or third quarter, we were talking in 2021, where the vaccine has been spread out to people, herd immunity might take hold if there is such a thing with this, and businesses will slowly be coming back as they are now, but I think people will be more confident later. And no doubt there'll be an explosion of activity. We'll probably see an economic expansion at that point, because I even see it now. There are businesses opening now that are taking advantage of different things. Tutoring companies, new franchises opening because of the distance learning and things going on with that. People taking advantage of opening up new restaurants, especially in Atlanta, when you're seeing restaurants closing, but there are restaurants opening because they're able to get better rates. They're able to find equipment that was someone else's equipment, so they're smaller investments in some of these restaurants opening up. And of course, people maybe because of the, out of work and stuff, they've decided to open up their own business. They're finding places to do that and maybe businesses to be in. So there's a little bit give and take in this environment, it seems. I know the city has been very helpful to business community, especially holding off, at the beginning, holding off business license payments and stuff like that. I know that sign ordinances have been, adjusted to allow businesses to be able to put out signs.
Outdoor seating.
Seating. Yeah, and even the events that are going on. So the city's still putting on concerts. The last one, even, Town Center can hold 5,000 people, I guess, but maybe there were about 500 or 600 people there, but that was the max, right? You guys sold out that within 24 to 48 hours, I think. Sold out, And
speaking of that real quick, it's interesting, we do feel strongly about if we can do it, continue to do it responsibly and safely, to have events out there because, A, it helps the businesses at the town center because oftentimes those people spend money before or after. And two, just, it's a quality of life thing. Our residents want to have something to go do and just, get out of the house or whatever. But we can only, it's just around 600, maybe just under is our max, where we had 6,000 at that second concert last year out there. And so, it's a stark difference, but there's a lot of demand. So you've got to reserve the circles, that have put out there. We sold out in 9 minutes for driving and crying this Saturday night. Driving and crying, 9 minutes.
Wow.
So, people want to now. Unfortunately, we're struggling a little bit with it. It's really because it's limited. We want it to be for Peachtree Corners residents.
Yes,
and there might be some indications of some gaming of the system by people who don't live in Peachtree Corners. So unfortunately, there might be some, residents that we would have liked to have participated in this, and they can't because others, moved in. But we're working on trying to, we're not trying to have everybody show us their ID, but it is, it is unfortunate when, we're trying to make it for our local community and others not so local jump in and get it. But anyway, yes, those are the little things that we're trying to do to try to, foil the local economy as much as we can.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but I guess there would be people coming in from outside that would want to see the concert. Yeah, it's tough.
It is.
Sure. And there's probably some somewhat easy ways to do it, but intrusive ways to do it, right? Because you'd have to know where people are living, geolocate them. Maybe they purchase it through an app, or maybe they register their home somehow as part of that purchase and stuff. But oh well, things happen. But city's moving along. Great stuff is happening. I'm really proud of the way the city has been moving Longshore. There are things that I hate too, the clear cutting and things, but those are part of development. Would have been on the East Jones Bridge Road, would have been the same thing as we see now, regardless of anything happening. But, we are an expanding city, and it's going to be that way. Nothing shrinks. Unless you're a small town out in some place and you're losing businesses, and then do you want to be that town, So I don't think so. I think we want to be able to.
We would agree. I mean, again, growth, and change can sometimes be uncomfortable, but it's better than the alternative because there is no pause button. You're basically either growing or you're not,
right?
And we much rather be the growing than the not.
Yes.
One other thing when it comes to that, though, that may be of interest is, Pedestrian Bridge. So we are just a couple of weeks away from finishing the bridge. We've got the elevators, got to go through final inspections and all that kind of stuff. On the road, you probably have seen the lanterns, as we call it, which are the caps on the towers that will have interior lighting.
Yes.
Those are what are being assembled on the side of the road, and then a crane will lift them up to the top, and those will be installed. And we've got the stairs going down from the bridge into the forum side are getting ready to be constructed. And then the last is the panels. If you look at the bridge, you'll notice that it looks like about 4 panels on each side. There's gaps for 4 panels to come in. And those panels should be getting here shortly and assembled. Those are the remaining panels that had to be precision cut based on how the arch came down through the panels. And, there's a lot of very precise cutting of those panels to get them in. And so, lead times, companies are just not operating as efficiently. The company that cuts the panels is a smaller precision metal company. They had a big COVID outbreak.
Oh, wow.
And so kind of shut them down for a period of time. And so anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know that, the bridge is not but a number of weeks away from it being done. And then, when it's open, you'll be able to walk from one to the other, and then we'll be able to remove at-grade crossing opportunities down below it at Town Center and Farm.
Sure.
And so that means that there won't be the ability for a pedestrian to force the traffic to wait at that intersection longer because they actuated the pedestrian crossing. That'll be removed. So it should help traffic at least get through that section quicker, because there will never be that time when you're sitting there with no, waiting on it to be changed, but Aunt Mabel is still,
pressing that button.
Yes. So anyway, that's kind of the status of where that is.
Okay. It'll be the normal traffic of cars moving around other than someone pressing that pedestrian button.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, great. We've spent a good 45 minutes talking about things that affect this city, the residents of this city. And it's always good to be able to get the facts, to be able to discuss things that are going on, things that are upcoming. It's always a pleasure, Brian, to be able to do this with you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for providing this, vehicle to get information out for, our residents. People get it different ways, and your podcast is certainly one that I hear people getting it from, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Love doing it. Thank you, Brian.
All right, take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to Prime Lunchtime with Brian Johnson, the city manager of Peachtree Corners, Georgia, with your host, Rico Figlione. This show is part of a family of podcasts produced by Peachtree Corners Magazine and Mighty Rockets. To find more episodes of this show or our other podcasts, visit livinginpeachtreecorners.com or follow us on Facebook at Peachtree Corners Life.